Now, Mostar is a city that I would recommend anybody to go and visit in their lifetime, but there are some things to know before you go. Well, luckily for you, this video is going to be full of essential and handy tips for your visit to Mostar. It's going to contain a wide range of advice such as how to miss the crowds, some essentials that you need to know, some practical tips and some handy extras just so you can have the best trip possible. Anyway, what are we waiting for? Let's get straight into it. So starting off at number 1 is that you are going to need cash. Now this is really typical throughout Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also the Balkan Peninsula. But anyway, a lot of places in Mostar do only accept cash. Now the official currency is BAM or KM, convertible mark, but euros are accepted in most places in Mostar. So especially if you're doing a day trip from a neighbouring country and you've only got euros, that'll probably be fine, so I wouldn't worry. And also, just generally, this video is going to be packed with information, so I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible, but you can always use the timestamps down below if you want to skip through. Okay, now next up is number 2, busy crowds and how to avoid them. Now, unfortunately, in the age of social media, beautiful places often means big crowds, and Mostar is no exception. Unless you so happen to stumble upon an excellent video, which is going to give you all the sneaky tricks. But seriously, if you're visiting from around July to September in the summer months, it is going to be busy, especially considering the old town is quite small and most of the streets are quite narrow as well. So if you aren't too keen on crowds, you've got 2 options which I'll recommend. The first is to stay overnight. So by choosing to stay for the night instead of doing a day trip, that gives you the opportunity to explore early in the morning or late in the evening. Now I've got to say, I've explored Mostar twice early in the morning at about 6-7 AM, and it is just a complete different experience. It is beautiful having the place to yourself. Even in the summer at this time in the morning, it's pretty much dead with nobody around. And your second option is just to visit outside of the summer season. So I'd potentially recommend April, May, September, or the start of October perhaps, when it's pretty still likely to be warm, sunny, and quieter crowds of course. Now, tip number 3 is that Mostar is pretty accessible from nearby cities. Now this is fantastic because it's well connected by coaches from major tourist destinations like Dubrovnik, Sarajevo, Kotor, Split, and a few other alternatives, all within a few hours distance. So if you're staying in any of the cities I've just mentioned, why not consider adding Mostar to your list as well? There are plenty of guided day tours from all those cities to Mostar, so I'll leave some links down below if you want to check those out. But if you'd rather travel there yourself and have a little bit longer, I would recommend Flixbus and Traveling.com. They're generally both pretty good for getting coaches throughout the Balkans. And if you're getting coaches, I've also got some more must-know tips coming on later in this video, so make sure you stick around for that. Okay, now moving on to number 4 is the bridge jumpers. Now it's undeniable that the most special feature of Mostar is its iconic Old Town Bridge, and you may have seen with that some videos of some very brave folk, or daft, jumping into the icy cold Neretva River from a height of 24 meters. Now, first of all, do not get any ideas. It is pretty dangerous and some tourists have tried it and actually died, or some people have been paralysed. If you really are brave and experienced though, you can do a 30-minute training course and pay to do it. Anyway, the people who do it are experienced divers and they do tend to make quite a big spectacle of it, but what they'll do is they'll kind of take it in turns to walk up onto the top of the bridge, basically just to draw everyone's attention and make a big sort of show or spectacle of it. It really is incredible to see, and throughout the summer months I can imagine they do it multiple times a day at least, so if you're around through the day you probably will see it. And if you want to be a really cool tourist, they can sometimes drag it out for quite a while, but you know that they're actually going to do it when the diver on top starts pouring cold water over himself to prepare. So that can save you from staring for 20 minutes in anticipation. Now, coming up for number 5, now I do not want you to worry, but it is landmines. But don't worry, you are not going to get blown up in the middle of the old town of Mostar. This is more if you plan on venturing further afield in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Basically, there are still some landmines lying around from the war in the 90s, but there's no need to worry. Basically, if you stay on marked paths and make sure you plan your route in advance, you'll be fine. Okay, now moving on, and while we're on the topic of the war in the 90s, I'd strongly recommend you go and visit the Museum of War and Genocide. Though be warned, it really is a raw and brutal experience, and you can expect to see some pretty disturbing things. Visiting the museum will give you a much more profound understanding of what happened across Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also the impact that that's had on its people. Now, I don't want you to feel pressured, but if you have the time and think you can handle it, I suggest you go and check it out. Okay, now on a lighter note, now if you're visiting Mostar or staying in a nearby city, I would strongly recommend you go and visit Kravice Falls. It's almost like a miniature Plitvice National Park in Croatia, except you can swim. Unfortunately though, the biggest problem is getting there. It's around a 1-hour drive away from Mostar, and annoyingly there's no public transport to it, so there's no buses and no trains. So you can either arrive by your own car, by a guided tour or day trip, or a taxi. But a taxi will probably be quite expensive. But to be honest with you, the place is a little bit of a holiday park, but it's so beautiful Personally, it didn't bother me, and to be able to swim in it is just incredible. Anyway, there are plenty of day trips that go from Mostar and Dubrovnik to Kravice, most of which include a few other stop-offs at a few different destinations. If you want to find out more about Kravice, I plan on making another video with everything you need to know, which I'll link at the end of this one when that comes out. Okay, now coming up at number 8 is extreme weather. You may not expect that mainland Bosnia can get so hot, but in the peak summer months, it's quite common for temperatures to go even above 40 degrees. So if you're not good with heat, maybe stay away from the hottest months, but either way, make sure that you're prepared with sun cream, plenty of water, things to protect your head. In the winter, it doesn't get seriously cold, but in the shoulder seasons, I think quite heavy downpours are quite common, but most of the time it's probably still going to be hot and sunny. So just something to bear in mind. Okay, now next up is that there are many day trip options. Now I've already just mentioned one in Kravice, but there are also plenty more. Now just a few of the locations of interest are Blagai Teke, Počitelj, Bunski Kanali and a skywalk above Mostar. Most of these sites usually are grouped together in one experience when you look at guided day trips and day tours. But yeah, if you're on a longer trip and have a bit more time, I definitely recommend checking out some of those. Okay, and moving on again, this one is pretty special. It is the Red Bull Cliff Diving Weekend. Anyway, just last month on my second visit to Mostar, I was really lucky that it just so happened to coincide with the Red Bull cliff diving. It's usually around the start of September and it's been going on for about 10 years or so, I think. Anyway, it really is incredible. They even build a platform 3 meters higher than the bridge so that they're diving off at 27 meters high. But honestly, the athletes and what they can do is just so special. So if that's something you really want to see, just check the dates and you might be able to plan your trip for when it's on. Okay, now number 11. This one is really important. It is phone networks and eSIMs. Now, most European networks, even with EU roaming included, do not include coverage for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Anyway, just to be sure, I'd probably check with your provider first. But if you don't have coverage, you're going to need to get a SIM so that you can access mobile data. I've used Aerolo a couple of times and it's pretty easy and cheap. You're probably looking at between 6 and 12 euros for a couple of gigabytes of data for a week or so. You can buy your eSIM before you go away, just please make sure you install it before you arrive in the country. You do not want to arrive into a new country with no phone signal and no maps. Trust me, I've been there. If you want to use Aerolo, I'll leave a link again down in the description, which will also get you 5% off. Okay, now this one is a little bit more of a practical tip, and this one is suitable footwear. Now the footpaths in most of the old town are like a kind of a weird cobbled thing, and it can be quite slippy anyway, but especially so when it's wet. There are some quite steep sections too, which again can be quite slippy, so I'd stay away from flat-soled shoes, flip-flops, Birkenstocks, things like that. Just try and wear shoes which are comfortable and have a bit of grip, and you should be fine. Okay, now next up is number 12 or 13, I do not know, but it is bus station fees. So this is a really important one if you're getting a coach in or out of Mostar. So most bus stations in the Balkans, you need to pay a small fee for your use of the bus station. But also sometimes you need to pay another small fee for your luggage to go in the bus as well. But usually this is just for big items like suitcases. Now the bus station is usually something pretty small. In Mostar, I think it was 1 mark, which is 50 cents or half a euro. And I think the charge for putting your bag in the hold of the coach is a bit more, sometimes like 4 marks or 2 marks, so 1 or 2 euros. And one final thing, it's quite common for there to be queues at the bus station, so I'd recommend arriving at the bus station about 20 minutes before your bus departs. Okay, now this is quite an important one, and this one is taxis. Now there are no Ubers and there are no Bolts in Bosnia. And another slight problem is you may get overcharged for being a tourist if you're using regular taxis. So basically just don't let yourself get ripped off and agree a fee in advance. The fees will obviously vary, but as a rough guide, I would say you shouldn't be paying any more than 7 to 10 euros or 14 to 20 marks for about a 20-minute journey, roughly. And finally, perhaps one of the most important ones and the last tip is currency exchange and ATMs. Unfortunately, if you need to withdraw money at the ATMs in Mostar, but also across Bosnia, you will get ripped off. Usually they charge about a €7 fee just to draw any amount of money. On top of that, if you've got a card which charges for foreign exchange fees, it can get pretty ugly. But don't worry, of course there's a few solutions which you can do to counter this basically. So first off, a golden rule is when you're travelling abroad and it asks whether you want to pay in your home currency or the local currency, always pay in the local currency. And another really handy tip is that before I get to an ATM in a foreign country, what I'll do is I'll bring up the foreign exchange rates on my phone and I'll search how much money I want to get out and how much that costs in pounds, my home currency. So then when I get to the ATM and I find out how much it's going to cost in my home currency, I've got a great idea already of how much I'm being charged for withdrawing money. So when the conversion comes up, you know if you're being ripped off. At this point as well, they can be a little bit sneaky where I think they can try to charge you their conversion rate or you can decline their conversion rate. If their conversion rate's really bad, I'd just say decline the conversion rate, and you may get charged just the €7 withdrawal fee and not the horrible extra fees on top of that. For travelling abroad, generally I'd recommend a few of the online banks like Starlin, Monzo and Revolut, which do not charge foreign exchange fees. Again, I'll leave some links down below to some of these cards if you want to download them and try them out. They're usually free. But if you're going for a longer trip in Bosnia, you may want to get some convertible marks before your trip. But if you are trying to order them in your home country, I'd recommend trying to do it in advance and letting them know so that they can get it in. Now, just before you go, I get you're probably sick of my voice, I am too, but I just wanted to quickly say that I put so much time and effort into my videos and investment so that they're as good as possible and as valuable as possible. So if you found this video or any of my others particularly helpful, I've set up a buy me a coffee in my description below, which basically allows you to send a small donation as a way of saying thank you. Unfortunately, YouTube pays next to nothing, and of course these videos are free and available for all of you to watch. Now, there's also a second way you can say thank you. If you plan on doing any of the experiences or day trips that I mentioned through Get Your Guide from the links in the description below, if you purchase one of these tours after clicking on one of my links, I get a small commission at no extra cost to yourself. Again, you can find the links in the description box below or just send me a message on Instagram. Oh, thank goodness we are done. I hope this has been helpful. There's been a lot to get through and a lot of handy tips, but I hope it's been of some help for you. Anyway, thank you so much for the support, and I hope you have an amazing time in Mostar. And also, I've got plenty more videos of incredible places like Sarajevo, Dubrovnik, Kotor, and also I've got a few more coming out, so make sure you stay tuned. Goodbye.